где-то на белом свете, там, где всегда мороз, трутся спиной медведи, а земную ось мимо плывут столетия, спят подо льдом моря, трутся обось медведи, вертится земля.
Today we are very fortunate to have Dr. Porrino here, who's a naturopathic practitioner, and he's going to share with us some ways we can stay healthy as the seasons change. We're getting a good dose of change in weather, blows, wind, and how it affects our body and such. So today we'll be on that topic, and so each month new topics. Welcome to come and join us when you can.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, so staying healthy with the seasons, spring cleaning. So when we think of this idea, this notion of what does it mean to be healthy with the different seasons, really what we're going to talk about is how all the different seasons kind of have their attributes, their sort of illnesses that go along with them, and how can we be prepared for them and stay healthy through those. This is a real quick thing about naturopathic medicine. We already went through everything. I don't need to belabor this anymore. But just to give you background where I'm kind of coming from with all this. So this tree, what I really like about this picture is that it has the 4 different seasons represented on one tree. So in some ways you can kind of extrapolate that over is that, as if we are that single tree, we're going to experience all these seasons as well, and how well we were able to adapt with them is going to be how well we're going to do during those seasons. So just real quick, in summer, we think of summer, we think of it's hot out, it's vacation time, it's stings, it's bites, it's scrapes, it's dehydration, it's heat exhaustion, it's first aid, really, right? Moving into the autumn or fall, that's going to be more of back to school, right, or back to work. People coming back from vacations have been all over the countries, all over the world, gathering viruses and bacteria and whatnot from those different places, kind of coming back under one roof, and that's when we see the first wave of the flu, really, right? And some of those fall grass allergies. And then into the winter, that's when we see the upper respiratory infections, is when we see that real flu season kind of kick in. So that brings us to the spring, and what kinds of things in the spring do we need to prepare for or kind of utilize for the best advantage for us? So what I hope to do today is kind of give you the tools so that you can stay healthy through the rest of spring. Spring's well underway, but also use spring as a sort of launch pad for optimal health, and how you can kind of use that energy of the spring to really kind of move forward with your health and stay good and strong. So now when we think of optimal health, one thing, optimal health isn't just running a 5-minute mile or wind sprints and things like that. We have to keep in mind not only physiology, but mind, body, mental, emotional, spiritual components as well. And that's something that's something that we always want to be keeping in mind, no matter what the season is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So staying healthy with the seasons, spring. Now what do we think of with spring, right? It's kind of the first thing that comes up usually is spring cleaning, right? And we're going to talk about how really sort of spring clean the body and how that relates to physiology. The changes in seasons, they're great periods of transition, right? And it's a very sort of vulnerable time in health. And as the weather fluctuates rapidly, it's easy to get stuck out in the cold, right? I mean, classic is springtime, farmer's market starts up. You're at the farmer's market, it's been hot during the day, you're in a t-shirt and shorts or light pants, and then all of a sudden it gets cold and the wind kicks up. And that's a very vulnerable time of health. In Chinese medicine, it's they call it the evil winds that can sort of take over these different parts of the body and make you sick. Physiologically, our bodies start to respond to different cues. You've got the time change, temperatures, different foods that are in season. We see just culturally, they're in different religions and again, different cultures, there's always ceremonies that kind of mark these changes in seasons, right? So we have like Native Americans have Sundance for summer, right? We've got Day of the Dead or Halloween, whatever you want to put as far as kind of that fall transition, Christmas, Hanukkah, that Christmas transition, Easter, Ramadan, and some of these other ceremonies for spring. And so it's always been recognized that the transition in seasons is a very sort of sacred time. There's a lot of transition and a lot of vulnerability there. So we'll step into winter real quick before we go into spring, so we can talk about that transition. Winter in Chinese medicine is a yin, it's a very yin time of year. It's cold, it's damp, it's internal, it's less activity and exercise. We're eating more richer, heavier foods. There's more watching movies and staying inside. It's the holidays. It's time to hibernate. It's cuddling up with a cup of tea at the fire, and it's the kidney time of the year. And that has its whole other implications as far as Chinese medicine and naturopathic medicine as well. But it's something that we'll talk about here briefly too, coming up, about how it's important to honor that, those sort of organ systems associated with the different seasons as well. Now, we come into spring and it's really about that rebirth, right? And it's the sprouts, it's that upward and outward motion and that sort of upward and outward energy. And the spring is this yang time of year, and that's when the pollen counts are up, and that's when everything's kind of out and flourishing, and people are just ready to get out of your house, ready to have all the kind of spring parties and barbecues and late nights. And spring is really it's the liver time of year. And again, we'll talk a little more about that. So this is all of you guys last weekend, right? Film festival, partying, spring, having fun, out late, drinking wine. Well, it's the liver that says stop. The winter habits can be pretty tough on the liver because of the type of foods, the indoor activities, and then that transition into spring where we are outside more and we're dealing with alcohol and pollens and other sort of toxins, if you will. The liver is really the organ system that has to take the brunt of what's going on. And it's the liver is sort of the system, if you will, that we want to support most during spring for optimal health. So we know the liver function is detoxification, right? It's the big thing that where the liver is involved. And the liver's job is to render all the toxins, all the metabolic waste, basically water soluble, so you can poop and pee it out. Right? So the liver converts hormones, it converts all the metabolic waste and chemicals. It's involved in hormone balance, immune, energy, skin. And it plays a large role in blood sugar balance as well. So again, that spring rebirth, we're coming out of the hibernation. You know, historically living off of like dried meats and fruits and little fresh food, and then classically, when it comes up in the spring, what comes up? What do you see in your garden, or what do you see in the lawn? You see dandelions, chicory, artichokes, thistles, beets, the burdock, fennel. These are all important liver cleansers. They are liver foods through and through. And it's so interesting that that's what comes up in the spring. Those are the first foods. And it's like Mother Nature has sort of built that in. That historically, when people have fasted in the spring, not intentionally necessarily, but foodstuffs kind of run out. The first then in eating dried meats and things like that, what comes up first are these spring greens. And so dandelion, really important plant. The most maligned plant, I would say the most maligned here, but one of my favorites. And it's the perfect spring food in a lot of ways. The leaves are the perfect diuretic. So when we talk about winter kidney, it's a potassium-sparing diuretic. So it has a lot of potassium in those leaves, moves those kidneys, moves fluid. The roots are full of what are called saponins, which are important for liver conjugation and liver immune health. And there's a picture there of dandelion green with the endive, which is actually chicory. It's a family of chicory. Burdock root, amazing food for liver, increases bile secretion, great for the immune system. Picture here of a burdock soup, some mushrooms and carrot. There's a picture of it coming up in the garden, burdock, and it is sort of in that thistle family. The thistles are really important for it.
That's the broad bean, right?
Yeah, like that. Here. Chicory, really common here in Sonoma. You see it all over the place. Chicory salad. Cleavers, or Velcro plant, a lot of people call it. That one's classic spring plant that you see in around your garage or in the cracks and crevices, and that's the one that sticks all over your body. Great for the lymph system, so detoxification. Again, artichokes, beets, fennel, classic liver herbs or plants. And so, the reason I bring these up, last year, people forget, one thing that marks spring here in Sonoma is the mustard, right? Those mustard greens, great bitter tonic for liver, good food. So, I'm not saying you need to go out and forage all of your food in the spring, but these are things to keep in mind, and I'll talk about how you can incorporate those. I mean, you can find all those foods if you go to Whole Foods, Sonoma Market, even Safeway carries a lot of those foods too, and you can make them into soups, and you can make them into teas and put them in stir fries and whatnot. So it's just things to think about. Has anyone ever had nettle soup?
I drink nettle tea all the time.
Yeah.
I make it like a dip. You know when you make it really strong, like a quarter cup of herbs, like.
Sort of a decoction.
Yes, that's what.
Yeah. Yeah, I just bring that up because when I used to live up in the Northwest, that was the marker of spring. It was the nettles were about yay big, and go out and pick them and make soup. It was just always. Nettles are really rich in minerals, great minerals. So spring, it's a time to cleanse, right? Spring clean, we spring clean the house, we empty the garbage, clean the yard, we do all these things in our exterior space that it feels good, right? It's satisfying to clean out the garage and clean your surroundings, and we do all this external, but what about internally? So cleansing in general. So cleansing, what we're looking to do is remove the waste products that build up in the body, contribute to inflammation. And that's my own little, the root of all chronic disease, and that's a whole other discussion. But I won't get too into it. Inflammation comes from a lot of different areas, and when it's chronic in the body, it has its effects on genes, on what's called epigenetics, if anybody's familiar with that term. I was at another conference about a month ago. The title was Environmental Medicine and Oncology, and talked a lot. The whole weekend was about environmental toxins and inflammation and how it contributes to cancer. So really interesting conference. But cleansing boosts the immune system, improves energy, resets metabolism, reduces allergy symptoms and reactions, contributes to hormone balance, clear skin. I mean, the benefits go on and on and on and on. So when we think of cleansing a lot, oftentimes we think of fasting. So fasting from food gives digestive rest, from work, physical rest, mental rest. What we're doing is removing waste products from the body, from the mind, from spirit. It's about purification. Now, in a lot of in history was, again, fasting kind of was something that wasn't necessarily on purpose, but nowadays a lot of people fast, and my question always is how realistic is it to do a fast? It's a great tool for cleansing. But it's not always very realistic, at least not in today's society. If you can take 2 weeks off, be on a beach, and eat nothing and drink water and tea and meditate, that would be amazing. But how many of us can do that? And my question always is that even necessary? And there's a lot of ways that we can detoxify and we can cleanse within our normal daily routines. And we'll talk about that more. So some simple, straightforward, easiest suggestions right off the bat is just to go green. So with products in the house, just get the toxins out. Go with some of those green cleaners. And contrary to thought, there are some good ones out there now, but the main argument is always that, oh, well, it doesn't really clean your dishes very well, or your clothes. And they're better and better these days. But the goal here is to reduce the overall toxic load that you're exposed to day to day. So, detergents, soaps, air fresheners, just get rid of those. When those are sprayed in the air, they're full of different chemicals that are shown to, some of them are linked to cancer. They're just not good to be inhaled. And this, I think, is actually one of the most important. Water and or a shower filter. That's one of the easiest things you can do to improve your health and detoxify, making sure your water is good and clean. And the reason why I say shower filter is because, you know, with things like chlorine that's in the water, the chlorine, you know, drinking it, obviously is not the best thing, but actually it's when it's heated and it's the steam, it changes the chemical structure of it, and it makes it actually a lot more hazardous. So when you're showering and you're breathing in the vaporized chlorine, and it goes right to the mucous membranes, it's a fairly direct line into your blood. So yeah, that's why I say go from the shower filter and get a water filter. So simple suggestions for spring cleaning as far as physiology. So dietary support. So there's a lot of ways to do this. So for 1 week, you might say, okay, for this next week, I'm going to go vegetarian. I'm going to have a vegetarian diet. That's simple. I mean, it's a simple way to give your body some of the rest, allow it to do some detoxification. You might say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to go take a step further. I'm going to go vegan. So no animal products, no meat, no dairy. Go another step further. Go gluten-free vegan. You go grain-free vegan. You know, so vegetables and fruits only. You could do in there. You could do a 1-day juice, broth, or water fast. You know, it's like on the weekend or something, where you can just lay low and do that. There's these medi-cleanses. So there's a lot of these medical cleanses out there, different powders and different programs, which are really nice. And I'll talk a little bit about them in a slide or two. But that's an easy way to do like a 10-day cleanse, but you're still active and you don't feel totally wiped out. But it's a modification in your diet, and you're drinking this powder that has some nutrition in it. And then there's things like, you know, you may have heard of like Master Cleanser, or the lemonade cleanse, and there's innumerable amounts of different cleanses you can do. The key is to find what works best for you. And again, I think the spring and fall are really great times to do a cleanse. And again, it doesn't have to be, you know, fasting like Gandhi or anything like that. You just find what works best for you. And this little caveat at the bottom is just, if you're gonna do a cleanse or make a big dietary shift, always check with your doctor, because it's not indicated for everyone. And there's just different variations that you might choose that are going to be more compatible to you. And so continuing on that list, so gastrointestinal, GI cleansing, go with high fiber, you know, for that week or for another week. And high fiber meaning, you know, 40 grams of fiber a day. Flax, beets, sunchokes, apples, those are all high fiber foods. Gentle herbal laxatives. And gentle, I mean, you want to be careful with things like senna. And too much senna, those are called cathartic laxatives, which cause the blowouts. Those can deplete you of minerals and dehydration. Just want to know that and be careful with them. Enemas, there's different kinds of enemas. There's a coffee enema, there's salt and soda enemas. But it's, for those who don't know, it's a great way to cleanse. And I know, you know, for some people do an enema once a week for the springtime, or once a month in the springtime. And that's great too. You know, the importance of cleaning out the gut is that that's where all the majority of the metabolic waste is happening, right? And when those waste products stick around, chemically they change. They become more toxic. And toxic meaning they challenge the body much more than the normal. So the liver really has to kick in to get rid of it. They tend to, when the GI system's not working well, those toxins have to get released somehow. So they'll start coming out of the skin. Classic ones is skin. You know, I was always taught you treat the skin through the gut, treat the skin through the liver, and it's true. There's not a single acne or rosacea or eczema or psoriasis or any skin condition that I don't address the GI tract. And that is where the majority of the resolution happens once the GI tract gets organized and you can clear out some of the toxins in there, or that sort of some of the metabolic waste that's just sitting around, and that always seems to help. And then again, I've got this little thing here. You know, with those who have the inflammatory bowel disease or the irritable bowel syndromes or diverticulitis and diverticulosis and some of these, again, you just have to be mindful of some of these other practices and take those into account. Because certainly you want to be careful of any perforation about if you're doing enemas or even the laxatives. If you go too heavy on laxatives, it can really exacerbate any of the GI disorders. And then I just wrote here about following up with a good quality probiotic. Anytime you're cleansing the gut out, you're going to be removing a lot of those beneficial flora, those probiotics, and so we're going to replenish those. So an apple a day. So that's why Aspen would use an apple today. And green tea was the other one. That's over and over and over again. There's just studies that come out more and more about green tea and apples. And at the conference again that I was at last month, I don't think there was a single presenter that didn't mention either apples or green tea. And it just, those are two foods that you do nothing else. That and water, good filtered water. You should incorporate it in your daily routine. Apples, you know, it has the pectin, that's the fiber, the polyphenols in apples, the triterpenoids. I mean, all the constituents in them are really good.
Fresh or applesauce?
Preferably fresh, but applesauce depends on if you make it too, or if it's you know, just your sort of hand.
I make it for my baby.
Yeah.
She can't eat the skins yet. She has applesauce probably every day.
Yeah.
Just apples.
Yeah, just apples. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, and the only thing, you know, and with apples, even if the skin's not there, there's still pectin, which is still fiber. And so when it comes to blood sugar and apple as a fruit and raising blood sugar, at least, and I always think about this with kids, because you know, you look at a lot of our baby foods and it's carrots and it's beets and it's apples, it's pretty high sugar foods, right? And so the nice thing about apple is, again, it has that pectin in it that helps balance it. Whereas beets, if it's just ground up, that's good. And carrots, same thing, it has that fiber. But what I'll talk about here real shortly is the cleansing juices, like the veggie juices, where that fiber is straightened out and just getting pure sugar. That's not good. I think the interesting about apples too, so it's in the, you know, its botanical name, depending on the apple, but the term malice comes from, we think of malic acid, that's one of the main constituents in apples. That's where a lot of the energy and Alzheimer's studies have been done. But there's a lot of folklore around apples, right? And the witch that gives the apple to the poisonous apple, because apples were used as a carrier of poisons in the past, because everybody ate apples for one. Apple seeds have a tiny, tiny fraction of arsenic in them. And there's actually been people who poisoned themselves by eating these sort of, on the internet, there's just cancer cures, apple seed cancer cure, this and that, and you start picking all these seeds out of the apples and eating, quarter or half full cup of apple seeds, and then they're in the ED with their transaminases level, all their liver enzymes off the chart because of poison themselves. But there's thought that that little bit of arsenic stimulates the immune system just enough to kind of keep it alert, keep it kind of probing the body for cancer cells. And the seeds are really good if you ever try and make kind of like an almond type nutty flavor. So if you really want all the benefits of an apple, eat them. I recommend it. So, yeah, seeds do. So these are just the liver foods and teas to remember. And that's one thing that you can do really simply is pick up a liver tea. Tea that has the dandelion root, the burdock root, fennel seed in there, chicory root. Actually, if anybody's had those coffee substitutes, the Porrino and some of those are dandelion, chicory, and burdock. They've just been toasted, and those are actually really good. Yeah, so just being cognizant of these foods. When you go to a restaurant, fennel salad, great thing to have. So juicing. I had a lot of people ask me about juicing all the time. And I think the benefits of juicing is it's a good way to pack in a lot of nutrients in a really digestible format. So you can get in basically your day's your 6 servings of vegetable kind of in one big glass. So for ease, that's a nice thing. Some of the things you want to be careful with juicing is, what are you using to juice? So, there's all these commercials about the Nutribullet, which is actually a really nice little contraption, that little juice. You can throw flaxseed in there, you can throw your beet in there, you can throw carrot in there, kale, and buzz it. It's this frothy smoothie with all the fiber in it, which is nice. Whereas some of the juicers, master juicers and Olympus, those strain out the fiber. And so you're just getting the juice, which means you're getting just the carbohydrate of it, which is a lot of sugar, particularly if you're doing carrot, beet. A lot of patients are like, oh, I love juicing. I'm like, oh, what do you put in it? Apple, beet, carrots, banana, and I consider that's great, but that's a lot of sugar. And so you want to really balance those juices. And so this is a simple recipe that I like. An apple, half a beet, piece of ginger, half a bunch of kale, 1 celery stalk, half a bunch of parsley, and then add some water to kind of thin it out, because you want it to be, you want about 16 to 20 ounces, so you can kind of split this up. And then these are sort of the cherries on top. So you could add blueberries or fresh frozen berries. The berries are great foods, by the way. There's so many antioxidants, so many phytonutrients in them that you just can't go wrong with it. Dandelion greens you can throw in there, flax meal, these are just kind of things to consider if you're going to do a juice. And flax meal is a nice fiber to help again balance the sugar. And then something like this you want to kind of split up into a couple glasses each. Sit there and and pound it down. I mean, would you sit with one serving and have a whole apple, a half of beet, half bunch of kale, celery stalk, and half parsley? Probably not. So you kind of have to. That's what I always, like when someone says, "Oh, they have a big glass of carrot juice," and it's like 12 carrots. Would you ever sit down and sit there and eat 12 carrots? Probably not. It's not. You have orange palms after that, for sure. And so this is just a sample of what could be a simple cleanse day, or not so simple, depending on who you like. So at breakfast, you had 12 to 16 ounce of veggie juice with a couple tablespoons of flax in it. That's the sort of cherry on top. You wouldn't have to have the flax, but you can put in there. Really quick about flax. Flax not only does it have the soluble and insoluble fiber, but it has the phytosterols, it has the lignans, so it's great for immune system, great for bowel health, a lot of great properties going on about flax. But then, between breakfast and lunch, you might have another couple 12-ounce glasses of water with some lemon in it, and if you want to make that the master cleanser, which has usually a couple tablespoons of lemon juice and some pinch of cayenne and some maple syrup in it, you can do that. Or add some apple cider vinegar, it's a great tonic. At lunch, you have a veggie salad with a protein. And whether you want to make that a vegetarian protein or an animal protein, it'd be up to you. And then between lunch and dinner, you have more water, have some liver tea, and then at dinner you had more of a vegetable type stir fry or steamed veggies or something like that. I mean, that could be just a really nice, do it once a week, or you could do that for a week long. It's again, whatever works best for you. So this is just again, note about the medical cleanse that I mentioned earlier, and there's a lot of them on the market. And they're usually these 10-day or 28-day plus cleanses, and they come with little packets and booklets on what to do on day one, and sample recipes, and they generally come with a powder, and it's usually like a pea protein or a rice protein powder, and it has all the amino acids, and a lot of times they'll have some green tea phytosterols in them, or they'll have some other constituents in there to kind of boost cleansing. And the nice thing about them, again, is that they're good for busy working people, because you can. I really love those blender cups. Have you seen those? They've got the little stainless steel like spring in them, and you just put your fluid in there, you put your powder in there. Screw on the top. The top has a really nice lid that snaps tight, and you shake it up, and it just becomes this like little smoothie. And it really breaks up the powder, so it's not all lumpy, and it has a nice texture to it. But those you can pack up and take with you. And a lot of these medical cleanses, then day one you change your diet to vegetarian. Day two, maybe you go vegan, but then you start the powder, and then day 3 is the same, and then day 4 maybe you cut out grain, and day 5 you cut out all sugars and maybe fruit. It kind of has this sort of, you work into it and work out of it, and the whole time you're increasing the protein powders, and then you're decreasing it. So they're nice, they're simple, and every time I do one with a patient, they're like, God, it's so easy. And at the end of it, any cleanse, usually there's usually some pretty modest weight loss, more energy. It kind of reboosts metabolism in a lot of ways. simple suggestions for physiology that spring cleaning even more. So we talked about food. Can't forget about the movement aspect and sweating. Skin is the largest organ of detoxification that we have in our body, and so it's important to sweat, move those toxins out. The lungs, another large organ of breathing. That's when we're breathing out. It's not just carbon dioxide we're breathing out. It's a lot of metabolic waste. So that's where exercise kind of feeds those two birds with one seed, right? Because you're sweating, you're breathing heavy, stress reduction, and it stabilizes blood sugar. So, movement 30, 45 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be wind sprints or elliptical. It's just a good march around the block. Just move the blood and the lymph. All you want to do is get that movement. Massage, oxytocin. So it moves blood, moves lymph, stress reduction. And then back to this slide. So, again, we can't forget about I talked about fasting and there's different cleansing. There's the food, so that sort of digestive rest, liver support, and then there's the sort of mental, emotional support that we want as well, and that's really where this mind, spirit, body comes in. It's important in the spring, or doing any cleanse, or even if you're not doing a food type cleanse. It's a great time when we talk about launching into optimal health. A great time to start something new. Start journaling. Get back into your prayer, or start meditating. Whatever. See a therapist. Talk to somebody. Unplug. And this is in that. So in that slide I showed earlier about that simple one-day kind of cleanse or week-long cleanse, you might, at dinner time, say, okay, once dinner's on the table, unplugging, turning off cell phones, not checking emails, even avoiding TV, read, right? One thing I started doing this spring is I bought this really cool box of postcards. And they're Audubon postcards. There's 100 of them, there's a different bird on each postcard. And I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is each day, I haven't been totally each day yet, but I'm going to write another friend of mine, just go old school, put the stamp on it, send it to it. Because we all love receiving mail, right? So it's fun to actually write. And so now a postcard is tiny, it's 6 lines. So, and it's a real joy to do, and that's a way to cleanse. Let's see, and I won't even get into I talk about unplugging. And there's also discussions about Wi-Fi, EMFs, these electromagnetic fields, and microwaves, and smart meter waves, and all these things now that are kind of impacting our body. We don't really totally know how yet, but some things you can do just to kind of to limit that. And then I just wanted to kind of throw in a couple things at the end. Again, talked a little bit about before how the transition into spring, and it's still going on right now, really. We've seen over the weekend and the last couple days, there's a cold wind that comes in. It's easy to get stuck out in that weather, and it might be nice and sunny, and you got your t-shirt, and then clouds roll in, and then you're caught, and that's where you get sick. And so have a scarf, have an extra layer. Just be cognizant of that. And one other thing I was afraid that there was going to be too many slides I didn't really get into is allergies, being allergy season. There's lots of different ways to approach it. I mean, this just cleansing is one huge way. But there are things like the vitamin C and quercetin, you know, nettles, things like this that I'll answer any questions that you guys want you know, after the talk or what, talk more about pollen and how to kind of avoid that. But cleansing is a huge way because really it's the liver that has to deal with all that as well. So if you lower the overall inflammatory load, you've got more room to deal with pollen. You know, one image that I bring up a lot with patients is that we have these, we all have this sort of this cup of inflammation inside of us, right? So some of us it's a larger cup, and some of it's a little, you know, espresso or shot glass, and it fills up throughout the day. You know, it fills up with stress at work. It fills up with foods that we might be eating that we have more sensitivities to, or sugar, or whatever it is that fills it up. If you don't get enough sleep, that's going to fill it up. Pollens, dust in the air. We're in an agricultural valley, so that fills it up, and when it overflows, that's when all those symptoms come. So if you can reduce that load overall, then you've got much more cup to work with. You've got much more inflammation to be able to deal with. So in some good time of the year to review your health and prepare for the upcoming changes. It's a cleansing time, physically, mentally, emotionally. Lots of ways to spring clean. Internally, just again, it's just finding what works best for you. And as Ben Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so, what I will do is come back to that, just leave it at that. So, this is all my contact information. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to email me or call or stop by the office. My office is over, it's right across basically from the library, 7th and West Napa, over there, right across from Papa Murphy's. So, and there's a couple of handouts here of the slides if anybody's interested. Any questions?